Hi, it's James Harrison. I'm here to talk about the next drummer's hot topic, if you want to call it this, and I'll try to explain a few things along the way. So, the topic today is vintage drums versus modern drums, for lack of a better term. And I'll try to explain why that seems to be something that people really clash heads about what sounds better. So, first off, let me just say that the definition of a vintage seems to have changed. It used to be something that was 50 years old or something was considered vintage. Nowadays, people say, oh, this is from the 90s, it's vintage. Technically, that's not necessarily vintage in my book. Maybe some of the 80s, but definitely the 70s at this point. But the biggest thing is the argument is people who like the vintage stuff so much, what they love is usually the sound. It's not maybe the looks of the drums, but typically it's not necessarily the mounting hardware or it's not a technology based question. It's more of a sound thing. They like the sound of the vintage versus the modern. And so, in terms of the modern drums, they like a lot of the features that they have with isolation mounting and probably a little bit better precision in the way shells are cut now and the hardware and all that kind of stuff. But so usually the biggest difference is sound. But why is it a difference in sound? Well, wood will continue to age over time, just like the wood in your house or doors or floors. It all continues to adapt to temperature changes and whatnot. And wood can do the same thing. The sealers that they use on them, a lot of the modern drums are probably a little bit more of ecology based, better for the environment type seals than the old ones, but also sometimes better. It's actually sealing the wood so the moisture content is not affected. Now, all that being said, why is it a difference in the sound? The number one reason is not the type of wood. That is a big reason, don't get me wrong. Different woods have different sounds. The biggest difference is the bearing edge. And what that is the edge of the drum that the head goes across. Okay, so if I take my finger and use it for an edge, let me let's see here. I don't have them handy. I'll do this. If I take these two mallets, and this is 90 degrees. Okay, if I do that, that's 90 degrees. Now, most of the modern bearing edges are cut to 45, which would be somewhere around there. Okay, where the vintage drums are actually rounded off at the top and they're not as sharp of an edge. When they're not as sharp, it's a warmer sound. There's more surface contacting the head. Therefore, it mellows the drum out a little bit. The sharper the contact area means less of it is contacting the head, and the head will typically resonate more. So most of the modern drums are at least 45 degrees. Some actually have a double cut. And what that means, instead of being a straight edge and one going at 45, it means that this side will also have a slight cut like that to make it even sharper. Almost gives it that timpani like effect of the head extending past the collar. Where the vintage drums are definitely more rounded. Now, a lot of your metal drums are usually bent in and rounded off. So they're typically a little bit more rounded as well compared to a super sharp cut edge like the wood. That's the number one difference. So the sharp edge is going to give you less surface contact, allow the head to resonate more freely, definitely giving you a little bit more cut, a little bit, typically a little bit more volume, but a little bit more cut, and definitely a little bit more resonance. They're going to ring or have more sustain to the sound. And for a lot of the modern uses, drummers like that because it's more penetrating sound wise. The vintage drums are going to be warmer, not as cutting, more mellow. Jazz drummers tend to prefer that. Now, a lot of studio drummers like that. A lot of touring drummers still like that. And with the technology today of close miking, they can mic that sound and try to get it out there. In general, people want something that cuts when it comes to any kind of the modern music. In modern music, I'm basically talking about touring artists in venues where they need volume. Okay, and volume can also mean miking and PA and stuff like that. Versus a lot of jazz artists that are typically playing smaller venues and sometimes not miking in the same way. They might use an overhead mic and That's it. Sometimes a kick drum mic just with a lot of the cut rolled off just to give a little bottom end and whatnot. But that seems to be the number one preference of why some people prefer the vintage over the um, sharper cutting edges. Um, Now, the interesting take, and this is going to be saved for another video, is even though so much of the modern equipment is designed to resonate more, sharper edges, more cut, more resonance, most people buy drum heads to take away some of that. So they don't want as much resonance, or they don't want as much brightness or as much ring or whatever. But that's a whole other discussion. So vintage versus regular, I've got both. This is you could probably see a little bit of it. There's an old Premier kit I have set up right here. I have my Slinger and Buddy Rich over there. It's not set up right now. Those are both more rounded edges. There's a Yamaha Recording Custom I'm getting ready to set up over here. I've just been changing some heads on it and stuff like that. That's more of a 45, and it's birch. And I am a huge birch drum fan. I grew up in that, and that'll be another discussion too. But the different woods can affect the sound, but to me, the number one effect of the sound, other than the drum heads, which have a huge amount to do with it, is the bearing edge. So vintage, a lot of people want that because they like the look, they like the whatever, but most of all, they like the warmness of the sound because of the bearing edge. My take, let's hear what yours is.